Quinn Hale didn't expect his Tuesday afternoon to end with a broken nose, a screaming toddler, and a woman in designer heels throwing a punch. He was just trying to get through the day. That meant picking up his 3-year-old daughter, Grace, from daycare, grabbing something cheap but edible for dinner, and praying his aging pickup truck didn't die in the parking lot again. What he didn't plan on was stepping into the middle of a shouting match outside a coffee shop downtown. "Get your hands off her," Quinn growled, voice low and sharp. The man mid-30s, expensive suit, smug face turned, clearly annoyed. He had his hand wrapped around the wrist of a woman who looked like she had just walked out of a fashion magazine. Her long black coat was half off one shoulder, and her dark hair was falling from a perfect bun. But it wasn't the outfit that caught Quinn's attention. It was the way her eyes wide, shocked, and furious met his. "This doesn't concern you, man," the guy snapped. "She said stop," Quinn said, stepping forward, placing his body between them. He felt Grace tighten her grip on his worn jacket from where she was sitting in the crook of his arm, her soft curls brushing against his cheek. The guy didn't back down. "Do you even know who she is?" "No," Quinn said simply, "but that doesn't change anything." The man laughed once, too loud, and raised his hand like he might push Quinn. That was the wrong move. Quinn dropped his duffel bag and caught the guy's wrist mid-air. The woman gasped, but not in fear, more like surprise. Quinn didn't give the man time to retaliate. He twisted his arm enough to make a point, then shoved him back. "I'll call security," the woman said, voice finally finding strength. "You need to leave, Jonah, now." Jonah glared at her, then at Quinn, then turned on his heel and stormed off toward a black Mercedes waiting at the curb. The woman let out a breath as Quinn turned to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes flicking to Grace. "Thanks to you." Quinn shifted his daughter higher on his hip. "You shouldn't let guys like that near you." "I didn't invite him," she said, lips twitching like maybe she was trying not to smile. "He's my ex and a mistake, big one." Quinn nodded. "Well, glad you're all right." "Wait," she said quickly, "what's your name?" He hesitated. She had an accent, not fake, not European, just polished, refined. Everything about her screamed money, and that put Quinn on edge. Quinn Hale. She smiled, and it was like something clicked in the air. "I'm Fallon Zeller." Grace tugged his collar. "Daddy, I want nuggets." Quinn laughed under his breath. "Yeah, baby, I know." Fallon looked at Grace, her expression softening. "She's beautiful." "She's trouble," Quinn said, grinning. "But thanks." Fallon hesitated. "Let me buy you both dinner." Quinn blinked. "What?" "For saving me," she said simply. "Dinner, my treat." He almost said no, almost. But then Grace whispered, "Please, Daddy," and Quinn looked at Fallon again. Those eyes, that calm strength. "All right," he said, "but we pick the place." Fallon nodded. "Deal." They ended up at a small diner on the edge of town. The kind of place with sticky menus and cracked booths, but the best grilled cheese in the city. Fallon didn't flinch once when the waitress spilled water on her. She just laughed and ordered a cheeseburger. Quinn watched her closely. "You don't seem like the kind of woman who eats here much." "I don't," Fallon admitted, popping a fry into her mouth. "But I like it." Grace was coloring quietly beside them, and Fallon leaned in. "You're doing this alone." Quinn nodded. Her mom left when she was 1. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. "It's just life. Got laid off from construction a few months ago, doing small jobs where it can, trying to make ends meet." Fallon's eyes softened. "That's a lot." Quinn looked at her. "Why do you care?" She blinked. "Because you stepped in for a stranger today, with your daughter in your arms. That says something." They talked until the sun went down, and the waitress started flipping chairs onto tables around them. Fallon offered to pay again, and this time Quinn didn't argue. As they stepped outside, Fallon pulled out her phone and waved down a black town car that appeared almost instantly. "You've got a driver?" Quinn asked, raising an eyebrow. Fallon hesitated. "Yeah, it's safer." He narrowed his eyes. "You're not just rich, are you?" She bit her lip, then smiled. "I'm complicated." He laughed once. "That's not an answer." She winked at Grace. "Good night, sweetheart." Grace waved. "Bye, pretty lady." Fallon turned to Quinn. "I'd like to see you again." He stared at her, trying to figure her out. She was nothing like the women he knew. She wasn't just polished, she was powerful. But she didn't act like she was better than anyone. Not once. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I'd like that too." She smiled, then ducked into the car and disappeared into the night. Quinn stood there, Grace resting her head on his shoulder, heart pounding like he'd just stepped off a roller coaster. He didn't know what just happened, but one thing was clear. Fallon Zeller wasn't just a woman who needed help. She was something else entirely. And she had just walked into his life like a wrecking ball. Fallon didn't usually call people more than once. But 2 days had passed since that chaotic afternoon on the sidewalk, and Quinn Hale hadn't returned her call. She stared at his name on her phone again, thumb hovering. No message, no missed calls, nothing. "Are you going to pace a hole in the marble?" Her assistant, Leela, asked from the leather armchair, sipping her espresso with the kind of calm Fallon couldn't fake right now. "He's not answering," Fallon muttered, setting her phone down on the windowsill of her penthouse, the city stretching out behind her like a glittering sea of glass. Leela didn't even blink. "You gave a single dad your number and expected him to drop everything and call." Fallon turned to face her. "He saved me from Jonah, he could have walked away." "And now you're acting like a teenager who just got ghosted," Leela said, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not." Fallon cut herself off. She was. She was pacing, checking her phone too often, replaying his laugh in her head like some kind of lovesick intern. She was the CEO of Zeller Holdings, not a woman who waited around for men to call. "Do you want me to find him?" Leela offered, tapping her phone with manicured fingers. "No," Fallon said it too fast. "That's invasive." "You had his full name. You could have had his tax records by now." Fallon folded her arms. "I don't want to look him up like that. He deserves better than to be investigated like a merger." Leela grinned. "You like him?" "I don't know him," Fallon muttered. "You want to, that's new." Fallon didn't answer. Instead, she picked up her phone again and stared at the one missed opportunity blinking at her. Then she made a decision. "I'm going to the community center on East 40th. He mentioned something about repair work there." Leela blinked. "You're going to track him down?" "I'm going to volunteer." "You've never held a hammer in your life." Fallon turned. "People learn." She left her penthouse 10 minutes later, trading her usual heels for boots and her cashmere coat for a windbreaker. No driver, no security, just her and the street. The community center had seen better decades. The bricks were faded, the paint peeling, and a handmade sign out front advertised a pancake breakfast fundraiser. Inside, the smell of sawdust and burnt coffee hit her first. Then the noise: hammers, drills, laughter. She spotted him instantly. Quinn was crouched beneath a scaffolding, covered in flecks of paint, jeans torn at the knee, the curve of his jaw dark with stubble. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms dusted in plaster, and he was arguing with an old man about the best way to fix a joint in the railing. Fallon hesitated. She hadn't thought this far ahead. Then he turned. His eyes landed on her, sharp and unreadable. He stood slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Well," he said, voice neutral, "didn't expect you here." "I could say the same." You lost? He asked, arching a brow. She stepped closer. No, I came to see if you'd call. He shrugged, didn't think you were serious. I gave you my number. People like you don't usually follow through. That stung, people like me. He set the rag down, ones who get into black cars and disappear into another world. I came back. His eyes didn't soften. Why? She hesitated, because I don't like loose ends. He let that hang in the air. Then, finally, you want to help. She nodded. Grab a brush. Fallon spent the next 2 hours painting a wall that refused to take color, dripping pale yellow onto her sneakers, and swallowing her pride every time a kid ran past her giggling at the mess. Quinn didn't hover. He worked beside her, occasionally correcting her grip or handing her a fresh roller, but he didn't smile. Not yet. It wasn't until she was cleaning her hands in the tiny bathroom sink that he leaned in the doorway. You've never done this before. Not unless painting a wine cellar counts. He chuckled once, surprising her. You're persistent. I'm curious. About what? You. He glanced down the hallway. You're not going to find much to feed that curiosity. I don't believe that. He exhaled. Look, Fallon, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just not in the market for whatever this is. What do you think this is? I think you're bored, he said plainly. And I think I'm the first guy in a while who didn't fall all over himself trying to impress you. Fallon stiffened. Wow, that's a little arrogant. Maybe, but I've seen enough people come and go, women with big sunglasses and bigger wallets who like the idea of rough edges until they get scratched. I'm not one of those women. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Then why are you here? She stepped forward. Because haven't been able to stop thinking about the man who stood between me and someone I should have walked away from years ago. Because you didn't ask me for anything. And because I want to know what it's like to be around someone who sees people, not profiles. For the first time that day, Quinn's expression shifted, not softened exactly, just unguarded. You want to know me? He asked. Fallon nodded. All right, he said slowly, then come with me. They left the center in his truck, which coughed out a protest before grudgingly starting. Fallon didn't comment on the cracked dashboard or the missing radio knob. She just looked out the window as they drove to a small park on the edge of the river. Quinn parked and turned to her. Come here when I need to clear my head. She looked around. It wasn't glamorous. The swings creaked in the wind and the grass was patchy, but the view of the water was wide and peaceful. He leaned back in his seat. I used to bring Grace here after her mom left. I'd push her on that swing and tell her the world was still good. Fallon watched him closely. Is it? He looked at her. It was that day I met you. She swallowed hard. I don't want to be a distraction. You're not. Then what am I? He turned in his seat, eyes locking with hers. You're someone I don't understand, but for the first time in a long time, I want to. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. When he dropped her off outside her building, Fallon didn't invite him up. She didn't need to. He knew this wasn't over. She stepped out, then paused and turned back. Next time I pick the place. Quinn grinned. Deal. As he drove off, Fallon finally smiled. He hadn't said anything about her clothes, her money, her family name. He didn't ask what Zeller Holdings did or how many properties she owned. He just saw her. And for the first time in her carefully constructed life, Fallon wanted to be seen. Fallon Zeller stood at the edge of the open-air food market, her heels clicking against uneven cobblestone as she scanned the crowd for Quinn. She wasn't used to waiting. In her world, people adjusted to her schedule, not the other way around. But this wasn't her world. It was his. And for reasons she still couldn't fully explain, she wanted to be in it. "Sorry," Quinn said behind her, breathless as he jogged over. Grace balanced on his hip in a purple zip-up jacket. "Got caught behind a bus. It stalled for 5 blocks." Fallon turned to him and smiled. "You're here, that's what matters." Grace reached for her. "Did you bring snacks?" Fallon laughed, reaching into her oversized tote. "I brought you dried mangoes and crackers shaped like animals. That count." Grace's eyes widened and she nodded solemnly. "Yes, that's fancy." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "I didn't even know crackers came in animal shapes." Fallon passed them over with a shrug. "They're from a tiny organic shop in Soho. They only sell to about 12 people." Quinn gave her a look. "Of course they do." She nudged him with her elbow. "You said I get to pick the place." "Yeah, but I figured you'd pick a restaurant, not a maze of food trucks and bees." "Where else can you get duck tacos, next to a guy selling homemade root beer out of a barrel?" "I was gonna say the county fair, but this works." As they moved through the winding rows of vendors, Fallon let herself relax for the first time in days. Quinn was in a good mood, cracking jokes with the bread guy and letting Grace try a sample at every other booth. He didn't treat her like a novelty or a prize, he treated her like a person. Equal parts confusing and exhilarating. "You come here often?" she asked as they settled on a bench near the edge of the sidewalk with a paper tray of fried dumplings between them. "Once a month," Quinn said, handing a juice box to Grace. "I let her pick 3 things and try to convince her not to use all 3 on kettle corn." Fallon leaned forward. "And does it work?" "Never, but I keep trying." Grace took a bite of a stuffed bao and pointed at a street performer juggling flaming batons. "I want to do that." Quinn didn't even look. "Not until you're at least 25. Fallon laughed, but her attention drifted to the performer. "I always wanted to learn sleight of hand. My mother said it was unladylike." Quinn tilted his head. "Your mom sounds like a real party." "She was strategic," Fallon said, reaching for a dumpling. "She believed everything had a purpose, even dinner conversations." "Sounds exhausting." It was. Quinn leaned back against the bench. "So what's your purpose now?" She hesitated. "I don't know. That's the first time I've said that out loud." "You'll figure it out," he said simply. Fallon looked at him. "How can you be so sure?" "Because you don't seem like the type who gives up easily." Grace interrupted by spilling a strip of mango across her lap and announcing loudly that it looked like a worm. Fallon laughed, helping her clean it up, and Quinn watched them for a moment in silence. When Grace wandered off to watch a nearby puppet show, Fallon turned to him. "You're really good with her." "She made it easy," he said, then added after a beat, "eventually." Fallon studied his face. "You talk about her like she's the only thing keeping you grounded." Quinn's jaw tightened. "That's because she is." "You don't have anyone else." He shook his head. "Parents are gone, no siblings. A couple of friends around town, but most people drifted after I left construction. I guess when you can't afford to show up for drinks every Friday, people stop inviting you." Fallon hesitated. "You never thought about moving?" "And uproot Grace again? No, she's just now sleeping through the night without waking up asking where her mom is. This is home, even if it's a mess sometimes." Fallon opened her mouth, then closed it. She hadn't known that. And somehow, it made her chest tighten in a way she didn't expect. Quinn caught her expression. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. I don't think I've ever met someone who accepted life as it is instead of trying to force it into something else." He looked at her. "What are you trying to force?" Fallon didn't answer right away. Then, My family wants me to step into the next phase. Marriage, heirs, mergers, like they're all part of the same financial strategy. Quinn studied her. You're not in love with anyone. No, not even close. Then why are they pushing it? Because love doesn't factor into legacies. At least, not in my world. He shook his head. Then maybe your world needs a shake-up. She looked at him. You offering? He didn't laugh. He just looked at her, serious and steady. If I were, would you take it? Fallon's breath caught. Before she could answer, a man in a blazer 3 stalls down called her name. When she turned, her expression dropped. Fallon, there you are, the man said, jogging over. He was in his early 40s, tan, wearing a watch worth more than Quinn's truck. I didn't expect to see you here. Board's been trying to reach you. Malcolm, Fallon said tightly, this isn't a good time. Malcolm finally noticed Quinn and Grace. His eyes swept over them, cool and assessing. Ah, I didn't realize you were entertaining. Quinn stood slowly. We're not a show. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. Didn't mean it like that. Sure you did, Quinn said calmly, but you can walk it back now. Fallon stepped between them. Malcolm, I'll call you later. He hesitated, then nodded. Of course, just, don't forget the gala next weekend. You're presenting the Zeller Award. Quinn's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he said nothing. Once Malcolm was gone, Fallon exhaled. Sorry. Quinn didn't speak for a long moment. Then, you're presenting an award named after your family. She nodded. It's annual philanthropy recognition. I usually skip it, but this time they cornered me. He looked out over the market. That guy, he one of the ones deciding who you marry. She winced. He wishes. Quinn nodded slowly. You ever get tired of pretending you're okay with it all? I used to, she said softly. Now I'm just trying to figure out what I actually want. He turned to her. Then come to the gala with me. She blinked. What? You said it yourself, you're presenting. They already expect you to show up with someone. Let it be me. Fallon stared at him. You don't own a tux. I can rent one. There will be press, cameras. I've faced worse. She shook her head in disbelief. You want to walk into a room full of billionaires and socialites just to prove a point. No, he said simply. I want to walk in with you. Fallon didn't answer right away. She looked at Grace, who was now clapping along to a puppet singing a song about vegetables. She looked at Quinn, waiting quietly, not pushing. I'll send you the details, she said finally. He smiled, not wide or cocky, just real. Looking forward to it. Fallon didn't know what would happen at the gala. She didn't know if the walls of her world would cave or if Quinn would walk away when he saw how deep her life ran. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't pretending anymore, not with him. And that terrified her in the best way possible. The ballroom swelled with crystal light and the scent of orchids imported from somewhere Fallon couldn't pronounce. A string quartet played a sweeping melody from the raised platform near the arched windows, and the crowd, draped in couture and old money, murmured beneath the music in carefully curated tones. Fallon had attended this gala every year for as long as she could remember, but tonight was different. Tonight, Quinn Hale was beside her. He wore a charcoal suit, tailored last minute by a friend of Leela's with a sharp eye and a soft spot for unconventional stories. He'd shaved, barely, and his hair was combed back in a way that made him look like the version of himself that belonged in this world. But he hadn't changed, not where it counted. You all right? Quinn asked quietly as the maitre d' led them through the sea of glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos to their table. His hand rested gently at the small of her back, steadying her with a touch no one else would have dared try in this room. I am now, Fallon said. She didn't miss the way several heads turned as they passed. Whispers trailed behind them like perfume. She caught phrases unexpected. Who is he? Not Malcolm, and didn't flinch. Let them talk. At the table, Malcolm was already seated. His expression barely flickered when he saw Quinn, but his tone was cool. Fallon, you look dramatic. Quinn pulled out her chair before she could respond. She looks stunning. Malcolm's jaw ticked. And you are? Quinn Hale, I fix things. Fallon pressed her napkin to her lips so no one would see her smile. Across the table, the chairman of the Zeller Foundation cleared his throat. MS. Zeller, we're thrilled to have you presenting tonight. Your grandfather would be proud. Fallon nodded graciously. Thank you, it means something different this year. The chairman glanced at Quinn with polite curiosity, but didn't press. As the dinner courses came and went, lobster risotto, truffle broccolini, and a dessert that looked more like art than food, Fallon watched Quinn navigate the table with quiet confidence. He didn't pretend to belong, but he didn't shrink either. He asked questions when he didn't understand something and challenged answers when they didn't make sense. She admired that. You're not intimidated, she said as the plates were cleared. Should I be? Quinn asked, sipping his water. Most people in this room have net worths that could fund a small country. He leaned in a little, but they don't have you. The words landed hard in her chest. A few minutes later, the MC took the stage. Fallon stood when her name was called, taking the stairs in heels she regretted now, and approached the podium. Each year, she began, scanning the crowd, we honor someone who's made a measurable impact on the community. And each year, I've stood here reading a speech someone else wrote, but not tonight. She felt her throat tighten. Tonight, I want to talk about what legacy really means. It's not just buildings with your name on them or investments that yield returns. It's about the people who show up when no one's watching, the ones who lend a hand without expecting anything back, the ones who fix what's broken because it matters. Her eyes found Quinn in the crowd. This year's recipient is a man who renovated a 20-year-old community center without pay, who volunteers at the food pantry on weekends, who taught his daughter that kindness is currency. Quinn Hale, would you join me? There was a beat of stunned silence, then applause, hesitant at first, then building. Quinn blinked. You didn't tell me. Fallon smiled. I'm full of surprises. He rose slowly and walked to the stage, accepting the plaque with a shake of his head and a look that said he wasn't sure what to do with this much attention. Fallon leaned in. Say something. He stared at the microphone like it might bite him. Then he cleared his throat. I wasn't expecting this, he said. I'm not great at speeches, but I guess I'll say this. I did those things because they needed doing. That's it. And if more of us did what needed to be done, maybe we wouldn't need awards to recognize it. The room was quiet. Then came the applause again, louder this time. Back at the table, Malcolm's expression had curdled. You used the foundation stage to make a statement, he said tightly. Fallon didn't look at him. I used it to tell the truth. After the gala, they stepped out onto the rooftop terrace reserved for VIPs. The city glittered below like it had dressed up just for them. Did you know you were going to do that? Quinn asked. Not until I saw you walk in, Fallon said. Then it just made sense. He looked out over the skyline. I don't belong here. She turned toward him. You belong anywhere you choose to stand. He hesitated. You're not afraid what they'll say. They'll say it anyway. I might as well give them something worth talking about. Quinn exhaled, something flickering in his gaze. You're not what I expected. I'm not what I expected either. He chuckled under his breath. I spent most of my life thinking people like you were untouchable, that your world would never overlap with mine, let alone invite it in. Fallon stepped closer. Then let me be clear, I'm inviting you in. Quinn looked at her, really looked at her, like he was trying to memorize the moment. "I've been thinking about that night," he said. "The one on the sidewalk. If I'd walked past, if I'd just minded my business." "You didn't." "No, I didn't," he paused. "And I'd do it again, 1,000 times." Her heart pounded. Quinn. He reached into his jacket, pulled something out with fingers that didn't shake. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't massive, it didn't need to be. The ring caught the light like it was made of something rare, not because of the stone, but because of the moment. "I don't have a yacht," he said, "or a private jet. I can't offer you a life that looks like the one you were born into, but it can give you one where every single day you'll be seen, not for your name, not for your family, just for you." Her breath caught. "I want to give Grace a family that feels like home, and I want that home to start with you." Fallon didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat was thick and her eyes burned. Quinn reached for her hand. "Fallon Zeller, will you marry me?" She nodded fiercely. "Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, simple, elegant, perfect. And then he kissed her. It wasn't the kiss of a first date or a tentative beginning. It was the kind of kiss that meant everything had changed. Behind them, the city kept on glowing, but Fallon didn't see any of it. All she saw was the man who had stepped into her chaos like a storm and stayed. And for once, the story wasn't about legacy or strategy or family names. It was about love. Messy, unexpected, real. And hers. Fallon's phone buzzed for the third time in the space of 10 minutes, but she didn't look at it. Instead, she stood barefoot in her kitchen, stirring pancake batter in an oversized mixing bowl while Grace sat at the island, swinging her legs and humming a tune she'd made up on the spot. "You're gonna get flour in your hair," Fallon said, eyeing the 6-year-old's enthusiastic mixing of blueberries into a separate bowl. "I like flower hair, it's soft." Fallon laughed, brushing a wisp of hair from her daughter's forehead. She still wasn't used to the word daughter, not in the way that mattered, not in the way that meant mine. But it was real now. The adoption papers were finalized last month. Grace Hale was now Grace Hale Zeller, and the name felt as natural as the sun streaming through the windows of the brownstone they now called home. Quinn walked in, his shirt still wrinkled from sleep, his voice low and warm. "Did I miss the great breakfast experiment?" "You're the taste tester," Fallon said, handing him a spoon. "And if you say anything other than perfection, I'll know you're lying." Quinn dipped the spoon, raised it to his lips, then nodded thoughtfully. "It's edible." Grace gasped, "Daddy." He grinned. "I meant, it's the best thing I've ever tasted." "Better," Fallon said, pouring the batter into a hot skillet. The kitchen in their new home wasn't much bigger than the one in her penthouse had been, but it was filled with things she'd never had before: drawings on the fridge, a recipe book with sticky notes, a stool for Grace to reach the counter. It was lived in, warm, real. The phone buzzed again, and this time Quinn picked it up from the counter without asking. "It's Leela." "Of course it is," Fallon muttered, flipping a pancake. "She's still worried I've lost my mind." "You did," Quinn said. "You just found a better one." Fallon turned the burner off and leaned against the counter. "She wants me to speak at the Zeller Foundation's Spring Summit. It's the first one I've missed since I was 21. Do you want to go?" "I don't know," she looked at him. "I've been thinking about stepping down." Quinn didn't look surprised. "Because of us?" "No, because of me," she paused. "I've spent so long building a version of my life I never actually wanted. I thought I had to be the woman who carried the family legacy like some kind of symbol. But I'm not a symbol. I'm a person, and I want more." Quinn set the phone down and crossed the kitchen to her. "Then take more." "I already have you." He kissed her forehead. And you have a whole future we haven't even touched yet. Fallon's expression flickered. What if I start something new? Something that's mine? I was thinking of a grant program for single-parent entrepreneurs. People like you. People who have the drive but not the resources. He leaned back, clearly surprised. You've been thinking about that. For months, I've already spoken to a few advisors. Quietly. I want to build something that doesn't have my last name stamped across every wall. Something that exists because it matters, not because it's expected. Quinn studied her face. Then do it, and name it whatever you want. Just don't try to do it alone. I won't. Fallon offered him a smile. I don't do anything alone anymore. Grace, now fully covered in flour and syrup, held up a pancake with both hands. Can we eat now? The three of them sat together at the table, plates full, laughter easy. It was a life Fallon had never known. She needed no assistance, no board meetings, no hollow conversations about market trends. Just morning light, shared meals, and a man who saw every part of her and stayed. Later that afternoon, they walked through the park near their home. Grace ran ahead, jumping between the cracks in the sidewalk like they were rivers, while Fallon and Quinn strolled behind, hand in hand. You sure you're not bored yet? Quinn asked, nudging her with his shoulder. You've officially been out of the boardroom for 6 months. I've been bored my whole life, Quinn. I just didn't know what it was. She looked up at him. Now I wake up and the first thing I think about is whether Grace wants strawberry jam or peanut butter. I don't miss the briefings. I don't miss the dinners where everyone pretended to like each other. He nodded slowly. And your family? They've stopped calling. I think they're waiting for me to come to my senses. Are you going too? Fallon stopped walking. Never. He grinned. You're sure? She turned to him. I gave up everything I never wanted, Quinn, and I got everything I didn't know I needed. I'm not going back. They watched Grace climb onto a low stone ledge and declare herself the queen of Sidewalk Mountain. I never thought I'd end up here, Quinn said quietly, in this life, with you. I did. Fallon tightened her grip on his hand. From the moment you stood between me and Jonah, I knew. He laughed once. That day, you were furious. I wasn't. I was terrified. You saw something in me no one else ever did. Not as a name, not as a number, just me. And that changed everything. He looked down at her, eyes full. You changed me too. As the sun dipped low, turning the sky into a canvas of gold and violet, they watched Grace wave at a passing dog and declare it her new best friend forever. Later that night, after Grace had fallen asleep in a fort made of pillows, and Quinn had tucked her in with a whispered promise to read the next chapter tomorrow, Fallon stood by the window and watched the lights of the city glitter in the distance. Quinn came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You still miss it? No, she said softly. It was never mine to miss. He rested his chin on her shoulder. So what comes next? Fallon turned in his arms, her voice quiet but steady. Everything. They kissed under the soft hum of their new life, the kind that didn't need to be loud to be extraordinary. No cameras, no applause, just two people who had built something real from the wreckage of what came before. And when they curled into each other that night, the ring on Fallon's hand glinting gently in the moonlight, there were no doubts, no what-ifs. There was only love. And that was more than enough.